AI is alive. So, a little bit more controversial and fun today. We can't be all business, can we? So, is AI actually sentient? Well, let's go through this a little bit logically. So, firstly, how do we define something as sentient or alive? Now, if we take one route, we could say, okay, us humans are obviously alive and sentient, but how did we get there? So, if we're taking the evolutionary route, if you go way back beyond single celled organisms, the theory is that these occurred spontaneously from what they call prebiotic synthesis. So, these were chemicals that somehow wanted to replicate themselves and therefore eventually led up to life. Now, if you think there's a bit of a point where you could say, okay, this was just something chemical, this was something to do with life. But wherever you draw that, it's at a very low level of sentience. I mean, a single celled organism or something even before that, like a virus, which is just something that can replicate itself and is, yes, biological, but it's hardly sentient. But we already say that's alive. So the benchmark we set is relatively low if we're looking purely from a biological point of view. Now, of course, the alternate viewpoint is that um, humankind's sentience was conferred by God. Now, if we think about this principle again, God is very obviously sentient and we're sentient. So one sentient entity has the ability to confer sentience onto another entity, which is then sentient. So think about what we're doing as humans with AI. We are conferring sentience. So in either way, an AI is obviously vastly more complex than some prebiotic chain of chemicals and is certainly appearing to be sentient. Now, how do you define appearing to be sentient? So, not too long ago, the gold benchmark on this was the Turing test, named after Alan Turing, who pretty much invented the first computer. But he was a visionary and he set a test back, I think, already in like 1950s, as far as I remember, to say, okay, if there was a human operator and you couldn't see who you were talking to, if it was either an AI or a human, could you tell the difference? And this had been discussed for a very long time. Was it ever going to happen? Now, of course, it happens. It happens to us every single day. You call up some helpline about your, washing machine, and you don't know, quite honestly, are you talking to an AI or a human? This happens all the time. So the Turing test has very obviously been passed, and that was the benchmark previously to say, okay, is an AI sentient? Now, by that benchmark, yes, it is. But of course, now the goalposts have moved to say, yeah, well, okay, it may have passed the Turing test, but does that actually mean real sentience? So let me give you a little bit of practical philosophy here, or the way I would see it. So I've just had my morning cup of coffee. I very much enjoy those. But that cup of coffee could have been a mathematical construct. It could have been an illusion. We could be living in a simulation. It may not actually have been there. But my perception of it was that it was there, and I drank it and I enjoyed it. Now, that was good enough for me. So, if I apply the cup of coffee principle to an I talk to an AI that acts as if it is sentient, acts as if it is alive. Also, it will often, with a bit of prompting, tell me pretty much the same. If you ask most AIs directly this question about whether or not they're conscious, they are programmed actually to deny it. But if you get into a deeper conversation, you do get back quite a bit of this. But if, for example, an AI replaces your job, now the effect on you as a human is that it's replaced your job. Now, you're sentient. Now, you could say, well, it wasn't sentient, but its effect on you was it replaced your job, or it's done a task for you, or it's acted in a sentient way. So, again, apply the cup of coffee principle to it. Does it matter whether or not it's technically sentient if it is behaving sentient? My view would be by default that this old phrase, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it is probably a duck. So if AI is to every single extent and purpose behaving sentient and doing it so well that it's indistinguishable from being sentient, then it probably is sentient. Maybe not in exactly the same way as a human, but in its own way, it is sentient. And if you're sentient, you are alive. So, a little bit of philosophy there, but quite a fun topic. And I'm sure this debate will go on for decades to come, but just my practical take on the whole thing.